I see it live on my phone on YouTube.
Yes, great. Listo. So let's wait 5 minutes so that people start connecting. It's taking some time, but it works now. Okay.
I see it live on my phone on YouTube.
Yes, great. Listo. So let's wait. So we're going to wait 3 more minutes before we start. So there's already people connecting. So we say hi, everyone that is already on our YouTube link. Please start writing your names, your country, so that we all know where you're coming from. So there's Joaquin, he's excited for this book. Clara Sofia, hi. So there's friends also connected. Katia from France, Andres from Cali, Ana Maria Osorio also from Colombia. Good morning, everyone. Who else? Alejandra Calle from Medellin. 19 people already connected. Welcome, everyone. Okay, we're gonna start. Oops. Okay, I think we're ready. So thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. I know there's gonna be more people coming to the session. And we're glad that this is gonna be recorded and will stay on YouTube for the people that couldn't make it on time or for others that couldn't make it at all today. So this is a very exciting moment for me and for this big team. I'm very excited. I think I almost couldn't sleep. But because this is the result of an enormous effort and inspiration, and this is what we expect to happen today, that we share and we transmit this excitement, this motivation, and this inspiration with you today. So today we're gonna launch this new book called Planning for Nature-Based Solutions in Cities from the Global South. And yeah, of course, where to start? Starting with this beautiful picture. I just love this picture. It's a friend, and she's Colombian. She works with healing. She works as a healer with trees. And this picture, she took it in the botanical gardens in Bogota. She has a project called tree healing. And when the person that was taking these photographs to her for advertising her brand and her work, this rainbow appeared in the photograph. It was not visible when they took it, but it was visible when the person was looking at the pictures. So it was quite amazing, and I think that's what we don't see, but it's happening. When we connect with nature, magical things start happening. So, hi, my name is Carolina Figueroa. I am the lead author of Integrated Nature-Based Solutions in Cities from the Global South, and I am also the founder and director of Selvar. It is a true honor to host this moment and share it with you all. I want to begin by expressing my deepest gratitude to everyone who made this book possible, starting with my incredible colleagues, the guest authors, who have dedicated so much time and effort to sharing their stories and insights. A special thanks to Nadia Citas, our project's main cheerleader. Every project definitely needs someone like Nadia, who inspires trust and believes that great things can become reality. I also would like to thank to Chris Gordon, who between planes, classes, and by the way, he's from Ghana and right now he's in Greece and travels, he still found the time to help me and to help us edit this book. And your commitment is deeply appreciated, Chris. I also would like to thank to Punto Aparte editors. Thank you for your tireless work in creating a beautiful digital edition right on time. The art of this book is amazing, you will see. And finally, a special thanks to nature herself. Her voice resonates through every story in this book. Thank you all once again. I'm thrilled to share this journey with you all today. So yes, this is quite impressive. No, when we start advertising this event, we got people from all around the world, and I want just you to check the numbers and to see where the people that are gonna watch or are watching now are coming from. We have countries all over the world, not only Global South, but also from the North, from Europe, from very remote places from Colombia, like Pakistan, Sierra Leone, Suriname, Faroe Island, which is very in the north. It's a north near Iceland. So thanks all for being today. This map shows really that there is a big interest in this topic, and this is even more exciting for all of us today. So this is where I want to start the journey and my story. This is the top of the mountain. This is where I start. This is the top of the mountain, and not any type of mountain. These are Bogota mountains. And what I see in this photo is my own personal story, because Bogota is the city where I was born, and Bogota is the city where I grew up. This is the city also where I studied political science, and the city where I fell in love with nature. This mountain that you see, I have walked it for hundreds of times since the 2000s. You know, before we said 90s, but now we say 2000s because there's already 24 years since the 2000 happened. And I have walked it with my dad, with my friends, and by myself. This is the place that showed me that the decisions that we make today are really transcendental for our future. And I'll tell you why. Because back in the 70s, the local government of Bogota decided to declare these mountains as a protected area. Today, so we have already like almost 60 years have passed since then or more. This is the biggest house for Bogota's biodiversity. And if this decision hadn't been made by then, this mountain today would be covered by buildings, streets, and concrete. So I got very inspired by walking this mountain and by nature, and driven by my curiosity as a political scientist. I had the honor to receive the Climate Protection Fellowship in Germany by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, which is a German organization funded by the German government. And during my time as a fellow, I investigated the crucial role of nature in cities and its impact on climate resilience. As a result, in 2020, I authored my first book, Integrating Nature-Based Solutions into Urban Planning, a First Approach for Colombia, which is the book I am showing here, and I'm sure that many of you know it. And there was even contributions from people, from the authors of this new book, that were also supporting me by then. And I just want again to thank Ecologic Institute, to McKenna Davis, who was my mentor when I wrote this book, and to the Alexander von Humboldt Institute from Colombia, who were my technical supporters, Diana Ruiz, during this time as a fellow 5 years ago. Then in 2020, when we published this book, I partnered with a foundation in Medellin to submit a project for IKI, which is IKI Small Grants. It's a German initiative that provides grants for working in climate and biodiversity. And we won these call for proposals for a small grant. And the idea of this project was to implement the guide I wrote in 2 cities. So going into every step and producing information, creating capacity building, and finally transforming the cities in 2 specific sectors, creating a nature-based solution, which was an amazing experience. Just for your information, we will be releasing soon the case study of this experience. But I just want to continue to express my gratitude with all the people that made this project possible. We work with HTM Foundation, with the municipalities of Soacha, of La Ceja, and a special thanks to Andrea Svensson, who is also here. She's also a co-author from this new book, because we walk together this journey that is walking from theory to practice, that, you know, it's a challenging one. And we all witness that this approach not only makes sense ecologically, but also we experience and we witness that this approach also reconnects people with nature. And it also fosters a stronger sense of place in urban environments. We are losing the sense of place. The sense of place is not the phone. The sense of place is not the computer. The sense of place is just feeling the space, is feeling nature, is feeling the people that surround you. And we're losing that. And that's why we need nature back in cities, because nature is an ally, is an ally to bring back this connection. So, and this guy has been on my path by his name, by his discoveries, by his drawings, biographies. You know, Alexander von Humboldt is an inspiration for me. And I love this quote. This quote says, "What speaks to the soul escapes from measurements." So imagine the greatest scientists of our times saying that what speaks to the soul escapes our measurements. It's something that, yes, it just says everything that I feel at the moment and how I have been walking my journey, because I think working on nature-based solutions, connecting to cities, and just, you know, creating and networks and knowledge based on that has been for me a call for my soul. It hasn't been that much an intellectual path. You know, it has been from my personal story. It's a personal story. And when he says that what speaks to the soul escapes our measurements, I never imagined I would found my own company that works on nature-based solutions. And I would have never imagined that I was going to publish a book on nature-based solutions, thinking not only in Colombia, but in cities from the global south. And not only that, but having the opportunity and the privilege of finding amazing people that have been walking with me this path today to have this launch. And before I go to the next slide, maybe you're wondering why the global south, you know? And there's a lot of information and positions and lots of political positions of global south, the term. It's okay. I mean, this is not the conversation today, but just for us and for setting a common ground on why we're talking about the global south here and in this book is we can lay down on these 4 commonalities that we have. So the challenges and in cities from the global south, we have similar ones, and perhaps much more than these 4, but I'm going to read them because these are the 4 that makes a lot of sense for this book. So first, our cities keep rapidly growing in size and population. Second, there is weak governance and law enforcement that threaten natural spaces. 4, our leadership very, very often lacks a vision for a future connected with nature. And finally, our local system struggle to promote sustainability. And I'm sure there's some countries that are more developed that might relate to this, but I think this is really something that brings us together. And from here is that we need to start working, because we know that making things happen is very difficult, that if we don't have political will, it's even more difficult. Convincing politicians is very difficult. And there is a lack of culture on this topic. So we have our path is steeper, is more difficult than in other places. So when Nadia was cheerleading me, saying, yeah, let's do it, translation in English, I was like, okay, who, with who, you know? And it doesn't have only to be a translation of the book in English. It has to be something bigger. We need to bring other voices because I'm sure I'm not alone. And this is how I start, you know, it was magic. I just can't relate and say was one straight path, the way I found all these people. But let me just give you some examples. So we have from Mexico, we have David. David is an environmental scientist, and Nadia referred me to him. We have also from Mexico, Diana Carrillo. She's an architect planner, and I pointed at her because she was part of a publication from UN Habitat. Then we have from Colombia, Andrea, that I have already talked with Andrea. We implemented the project with Iki in Soacha, La Ceja. She's a biologist. Sebastian works with me. He's an environmental engineer. Juan Carlos is expert in ecology and water management. Maria Stella is a lawyer. Isabel, she's a biologist. Diana as well. Pablo, he's a civil engineer. Paola is an environmental manager. Hubert, he's an architect. Raquel is an architect. Christopher, he's an expert, he's an environmental scientist. Nadia is an expert in ecology and resilience. Washington, he's expert in disaster management and diplomacy. Leah, she's an expert she's a lawyer. And from the Middle East, we have Zina from Jordan. She's an architect. We have Leticia from Lebanon. Leticia is a political scientist as me. Sima and Harini, they are experts in environment, in conservation, sustainability, and urban sustainability. And we have also an invited artist who is Sandra Viviana. She is Colombian, but she has been living in Canada for the last 18 years. So there is also something very special about this book, because when we think about how we relate to nature, you know, this relationship can be very diverse, and we relate in very different manners. Some people have a very strong connection to nature. Others like nature but prefer seeing the nature just as a background because they are scared of insects, that happens very often. But in this diversity, we cannot just ignore that trees exist in our cities. I think that's the main feature we have. So I met Sandra Viviana in Berlin in a conference this June, and Sandra was exhibiting her artwork. She worked with trees in Montreal, and she's done a great work. Please look at her. Maybe, Sandra, you can share your Instagram on the YouTube website so that people can also know about you. But so then we said, when I met her, I said, you know, you need to be part of this project because this is another way that we have to connect with nature, you know, from a spiritual perspective, from an artistical perspective. And those relationships are important as when water provides us, when nature provides us with water, or when nature provides us with food, or when nature provides us green spaces. Nature provides healing. Nature provides medicine. And so we start discussing with Sandra on this possibility of working together. And I thought about this opportunity. I don't know how it came, but we said, why don't we think about a global forest from the global forest from the global south? And then we start thinking about trees, and then we asked the guest authors which were their emblematic trees from their cities. And this is how we got to this list of trees and one plant, which is the frailejón, but the rest are trees. So we have the cedar, we have the jarumo, the camboim, So yarumo is from Colombia. Cedar, you can find it in many places, Asia and South America. The strawberry tree that is very characteristic from Jordan, Lebanon. We have the ceiba, which is also South American. Maybe there is also in Africa, I'm not sure. The frailejón, which is a plant that we find here in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, which is very important. It can grow like 6 meters or something like that, and it's very important for water regulation. We have the banana. We all eat bananas, and it's very, very important plant. And there's very, very interesting stories about how using banana plantations to control water floodings and in Africa. And the first one was, yes, the banyan tree, which is the tree under which the Buddha got enlightened. And this tree is very present in Asia, in India, and it's a beautiful and magnificent tree. All of them are beautiful and magnificent, and we just want to continue the exploration of trees because their stories are just very amazing. Okay, so how to get the book. And this is, I'm just gonna share this, what happened, why we got here. So we're selling the book. We're selling the book. Why? It could be free. It could have been free, but we decided to sell it because this selling needs to continue supporting our work. What we have seen and what I have seen is that for citizens that want to work with nature in their cities, it's too difficult. There's normally no funds, and the funds are normally coming from the people's own pockets. And private initiatives are very scarce. They're becoming even every time more and more present. But this is a very important effort that needs to keep growing. So for this reason, we are starting to, we will start using the funds of the selling of the book for creating nature-based solution labs across cities in the Global South. We will start with one and grow from there. So whatever we get from selling this book will completely go to this funding. And then with the guest authors of this book, we will start managing where to start and how to start. But the idea is that this fund will help citizens and communities in cities to work with nature. And it's not only going to be give them the money, but there's going to be technical advice, technical advisory, and support for their ideas. So there are two prices. We have one price of $12 for Colombia and the Global South, but also we have another price which is higher for people that can pay more. Okay, so you can choose any of the two prices according to your possibilities, but please know that these funds will continue foster this effort, because this is an effort that we don't want that it stays in a book. We really need to keep growing this community. And for students, the book will be for free. They will need to fill a form, but we're still working on that. Okay, I continue then. So, and don't miss the opportunity to chat with us and have a creative encounter with trees and nature at COP16. So we will have a space. Many of us will be there. Nadia, Andrea, Sandra, Sebastian, we will all be there. The idea is to have a conversation with people that have worked with the guide, as with people that haven't worked with the guide, but that have been leading projects in cities. And we will have 1 hour and a half session. So 1 hour and a half session which would be half conversation and have an artistic experience with Sandra and your hands and drawing. Okay, so please come. You can register on the link. And just a glimpse of the contents of the methodology. So there's two things here. You will see the 8 steps that this new guide has. But also, because you're wondering what's going to happen next in this conversation, we will have a conversation with guest authors, and the questions relate closely to the contents of the book, okay? So then you will have more information about what you will find. But let me just walk you very briefly on the methodology of the book. So the book is very driven to action. We need to make things happen. We give an order. We give inspiration in every step. We give tools. We give knowledge on what has worked, what hasn't worked, so that really at the end, after reading the book, you cannot say, I don't know how to do it, because you will know how to do it, okay? That's the main purpose of this book. So first, the first step is understanding where are the places available for working on nature-based solutions in cities. Then the second step is understanding where are the needs of the city that can be managed through NBS, through nature-based solutions. The third step is to understand the city of the future for focusing priorities and funding in those places. So as you see, I'm talking about areas. So step 1, 2, 3, and even 4 have a specific GIS or a map that shows you where are the places available, where are the needs for the future. And the step 4 combines the previous steps to prioritize. So from a wide universe that can be shown in the previous steps, step 4 really gets to a condensation and a prioritization. Then we walk to the next 4 steps. Step 5 being the design of nature-based solutions. We suggest specific ways of designing that contribute to climate, so that the NBS is really an NBS and is not like just planting trees. You know, there's more reflection and there is more construction behind designing NBS, and we explain how to do it. And this section is very, very rich. We have experiences from Colombia, from Brazil, from Jordan. And let me just, before I finished walking you through the methodology, let me just back to the previous steps, because, for example, in availability, we have a very interesting story from India, understanding what are the common and uncommon places for biodiversity that we overlook sometimes. And the needs, we have also experiences from Ghana, from Professor Gordon, that tell us how he did this mapping of identifying the needs from a climate perspective. And for urban futures, there is a very interesting combination of how we did a very practical participatory approach for understanding what the future looks like and what are the needs of the city in the future. And we also have a policy approach for urban futures, which is to give a vision of the city in terms of biodiversity, which is with the example of the city of Khurridabad, written by Hubert. And in the prioritization, and I'm very, very sad that Leticia couldn't join. Leticia, she's from Lebanon. Lebanon is going these days through very, very difficult moments, and she couldn't make it today because her internet connection is not stable. But Leticia wrote a very interesting story about an NBS. They end up building in a bridge that wasn't that didn't finish the construction, because, you know, that's the kind of things that we encounter out in our countries, big infrastructure projects that never end, or that are just left behind in the middle of, you know, and with many question marks. And that's the type of things we find. And they use this bridge for transforming the bridge in a garden for the community. So, okay, so let's back for step 5, design. Step 6, implementation. Oh my God, there's many things that we need to think in implementation. And, you know, there is a gap. There's many times you can design very beautiful things, but then when it gets to action and you don't find the plants, you don't have enough money, then you find difficulties on your on the soil with the community, or there's many things that can happen. We bring you those insights in step 6. Step 7, NBS finance. Here there is another compared to the previous version. So step 6 is a new step, and there is a reloaded step 7 in terms of the conceptual part, because we bring an approach of business model. So how to make NBS that can be conceived from a business model is very important. And we explain how to do it there. And we have experience from Ecuador with the water fund from Quito. And we also have a very interesting scheme that was implemented in India for creating green jobs. And finally, we have a step 8 that talks about monitoring, that gives you different types of indicators that you can use for NBS monitoring. And here we have an example from Colombia, and we have a reflection from Instituto Humboldt, and we have a reflection from David about monitoring. You know, this is something that is very important for projects, for donors, and normally there isn't enough time, or there isn't people doing it, or it just doesn't have a continuous process. So we think about all of this in this step. Okay, this was our snapshot. And so we would love to hear from you. You know, we are checking the YouTube chat, and please bring your questions there if you have some until now. And we will open, we just finished this first part, and I'm gonna open the panel discussions with our guest authors. But just please, if you have any questions, just bring them here. Okay, so let's start. We will have 2 panel discussions, 2 questions each. So we will open a space for questions and answers. So questions from the audience, answers from our guest authors about these 2 questions or other questions that you have. So let me know, Sebastian, if we have questions until now. I don't see, but just have in mind that we are really checking the YouTube chat. Okay, so let's start. Please, Nadia and David, turn on your cameras, and that Nadia and David will discuss why is there a need to have a guidebook specifically for and from the Global South. So let me introduce you very briefly to both Nadia and David. Nadia is a pracademic. I love this word, practice and academic, specializing in social ecological resilience with a focus on gender equity and social inclusion. She is the thematic lead on ecosystem-based adaptation for the Climate and Development Knowledge Network at South North. And she has an extensive experience working in transdisciplinary teams. She is also a dedicated professional supporter, thinker in the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, the IPBES, as well as David, and that's why they know each other. And David, he is an environmental scientist with a postgraduate studies in ecological economics, over 10 years of professional experience. His main interest and expertise focus on socio-ecological systems and how decision-making can be improved for better management. He has led research and action initiatives on integrating ecosystem services into decision-making, managing rural coastal communities, developing environmental education programs, and assessing user preferences for alternative economic solutions. So Nadia and David, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Carolina. And Nadia, you want to start?
Do you want to go first?
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Carolina, and thanks for the very valuable insights that you've already provided. There's quite a lot of things that already inspire me from your points. Maybe it's important to say that I come from an NGO that it's called La Ceiba, so you have one of those trees inspiring the name of my organization. But now going into trying to answer this first question, why do we need this guide from the Global South? There's four things that I wanted to highlight. The first one is that Global South contexts are highly diverse and complex, but they have lots of things that can be shared to the world. And so there's a lot of learnings from these Global South experiences that are reflected in this guide that come from Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Mexico, Costa Rica, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, Lebanon, Jordan, that can illustrate how we can adapt to a changing world and a world that is living a triple planetary crisis linked to biodiversity, climate change, and pollution. I do believe that the stories that are highlighted in this book provide real-life lessons that can be shared across scales and inspire nature-based solutions in different contexts. The second aspect is that I believe that this guide can also show how the inclusion of diverse voices in nature-based solutions is a key element. And this is with nature-based solutions becoming more and more important and brought into different discourses of how decision-making should be made. It is important to always keep in mind that nature-based solutions should be implemented in collaboration with different stakeholders that all have a stake on what happens in terms of urban settings and who benefits and who is affected by the solutions that are being implemented. The third element is that this document is also relevant beyond scale. So it goes beyond the local level or the urban level. It also contributes to global environmental action. And especially as we approach COP16 on biodiversity in Colombia, this guide provides a useful tool that can support Target 12 on enhancing green spaces and urban planning for human well-being and biodiversity, which underscores the importance of biodiversity, urban planning, biodiversity inclusive urban planning, and the relevance of integrating nature in built environments. I do think that this step-by-step guide that provides these 8 steps based on the experiences from the Global South, provide lots of opportunities to see how nature-based solutions can be brought into urban planning and provide and become a learning process itself, because this is not a recipe. It's not like it's more like cooking, right? It provides a general guide which people can then take and kind of reflect on their own context, what are the ingredients that they have, and build their own recipe based on these experiences. So I'll stop there and give the floor to Nadia.
Thank you so much, David. And I think I echo, so many things about what you just said. I just wanted to also highlight that I come from I come from Cape Town in South Africa, and I'm showing a different type of forest. You spoke a lot about trees, but here's the kelp forest that's on my doorstep in my city that's behind me. So why the need for this guide, and why is it really important that it comes from the Global South? And I think essentially it's helping me do my job. And as a knowledge broker and working with diverse communities and diverse actors, really trying to think of what is the evidence that they can use to support decision-making and implementation of work, and especially around ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions. Looking for stories and looking for evidence and looking for good practice is incredibly useful. And what I was finding in trying to look for these types of resources is that either they were mostly provided and written by authors from the Global North. And I think that is a pattern that's echoed across literature when people are writing about nature-based solutions in cities. A lot of it comes from the Global North, and the importance of making sure that when we are informing development, it's based on kind of contextual realities and lived realities from people on the ground. And when we were looking and thinking about this guide and thinking about how it could inform some of the work that we do, We also looked across to see other guides and to see what those looked like and what they were focusing in on. And really there was a need to bring in these stories and to bring in these experiences of trying different approaches, engaging with different actors, taking different steps, and weaving them together in different processes. And so there's a huge need for guides like this and various iterations. And it's so wonderful that we've got an opportunity to engage with people and find out what your challenges are. And hopefully this is a living guide that can be shaped as people implement and think about nature-based solutions in the work that they do going forward. I think that we all know that the world is rapidly urbanizing. We really need to think about how future development takes place. And luckily, you know, a lot of the concrete hasn't been poured yet. So if we start thinking strategically with guides like this, we can start thinking about ways that we can make sure nature-based solutions are implemented in ways that are kind of sustainable. They match local ecologies, but are also implemented in ways that are just. I think there's a lot of kind of green gentrification processes. Obviously, we all want to live near nature, and that immediately means that some people are forced out of places. So the guide really pinpoints, and I think guides that pinpoint ways to include gender equity and social inclusion concerns at every single step, and what are the requisite funding requirements, I think are really, really important. So it's so wonderful to hear how people are reflecting in each of the different chapters. There's an amazing chapter on futuring and the role of imagination in those processes. What do we want these cities to look and feel like? And how can this reflect the needs of people on the ground? And what I really appreciated, and especially in the context where I work, is the engagement with informality. So in lots of time, you know, lots of the guides don't factor in issues related to informality and how the majority of people actually live and work and move through spaces. And so it's really amazing to hear from stories that are grappling with some of those challenges as well. So it's, as Cara said, I'm a cheerleader of the guide. It really is going to help me in the work that I do. And it would be wonderful to hear from other people that start using this guide as well. So back over to you, Cara.
Thank you, Nadia, and thanks both for these interesting reflections. Just to sum up and just to highlight very briefly, yes, this is a guide that is flexible, that will give you ideas, that try to be as inclusive as possible, as Nadia was explaining, in terms of gender, in terms of social inclusion, but also understanding the diversity of our realities and understanding that we have and we need to deal with informality, and that we still struggle a lot to deal with informality, and how to bring nature-based solutions into informal settlements, which is almost from a legal perspective something that is very difficult to answer, you know, because there's always many barriers for people working in the municipalities to act in something that is informal. So yes, so you will find all of that in the book. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, David. So we'll continue the discussion. Please remember that you can bring your questions on YouTube. We are not seeing any yet, but I'm sure you're gonna have any based on what we're saying. So I'll continue. Let me just share again my screen with the next round of conversation with this second question. The question is, and let me just make it bigger. What are the most important lessons you would like to share from NBS implementation? And I will invite for this question to Hubert, Zina, and Washington, which I will introduce just now. So Hubert Mendez is a multifaceted Costa Rican professional with a rich background in architecture, education, and research, with extensive experience spanning from public institutions, private sector engagement, and non-government organizations. He brings a wealth of expertise to these roles. He worked with the municipality of Curridabat as an advisor, and his contributions have been instrumental in shaping the innovation approach in the city of Curridabat, with the policy of the Sweet City, which is the main story that we share in the book, which is an amazing story. So that's Hubert. Let me just introduce Sina. Sina, she is from Lebanon. She is the manager and main designer of the design department of Zanabel Landscape Architecture, Urban Design and City Planning. She has more than 18 years of experience in designing private and public spaces in Jordan in the Middle East. She has extensive knowledge of holistic and creative design solutions. She has a master's in urban city design and city planning from University College of London, and a bachelor's in landscape design and ecosystem management with a diploma in agricultural engineering from the American University of Beirut. And Washington Kanyangi, he is from Kenya. He's a research associate at ARIN, specializing in climate justice, disaster risk reduction, and environmental sustainability with expertise in disaster management, climate change, sustainability, and international diplomacy. He has enhanced his knowledge through courses on NBS, global diplomacy, and women's health. So welcome, Washington, Hubert, and Zina. And I'll give the floor first to Hubert, and then to Zina, and finally to Washington. So the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Just let me say that I'm thrilled to be here. I was waiting anxiously to see this book fully published. So the key, let's say, challenges that we have are that in our scale, in Costa Rican scale, and probably in most Latin American countries, cities lack a vision, a development vision. So in Korea, we decided to make a new approach to planning, integrating nature, but also integrating well-being. Saying that, was a process that endured a lot of challenges through many political resistance from let's say national parties who saw this this new approach as a let's say a challenge also for national political view, because in Costa Rica we have a let's say we have an international image that Costa Rica is very nature-oriented country, but our cities have a poor environmental performance. I always use this example that we have 6% of the global biodiversity, but we only treat around 6% as well of our sewage. So it's very hard to let's say overcome that contradiction. So when we started thinking about that, it was so as a let's say some kind of naive. Even the use of sweets in a city brand was so as a naive, but with the time it gained a lot of recognition, and the term let's say got into population's heart and got into also another political realms of the country, and we think that in terms of the political issues, we were successful to overcome some of the resistance. In terms of implementation, a development vision, we decided to focus on the public space, streets and parks, and during the first phase. So most of the tools that we designed to overcome those the natural phenomena that were happening in the baseline streets or in the business as usual street designs that we had, also had a lot of let's say resistance from some communities and resistance from the national governments in terms of how we were introducing nature and nature-based solutions in the run of water systems. And in terms of how can we now see those challenges, especially now that I'm working in another municipality, I'm working at the capital city of Costa Rica, San Jose. Now the challenges are, for example, the surveillance cameras that we have that probably don't interact as well with our expectations of nature growth and nature presence in the city. We have a lot of information. We know that we are reaching the 48 C degrees, the 48 degrees in temperature in San Jose. So we need to act quickly to not expose people to those to hyperthermia. We need a lot of support and a lot of from cities and from our partners to overcome those issues, and that is also in terms of financial terms one of our challenges.
Thank you, Hubert. So now I'll give the floor to Zina.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Great.
Okay, so the question about the lessons learned from the NBS solutions is actually, I need to retract a little bit further, is actually why do we need this nature-based solution? Because in our area or in our region, we feel that we cannot actually implement the holistic theme or the holistic needs for us to be able to implement the nature-based solution public spaces, for example. For example, in our area, mostly from where I am now, I am from Lebanon, but I'm living in Jordan now. We have a problem of actually having a coordination between the public sector and the private sector, as well as having involving the community with really having decision making for their public open spaces and their spaces in the city. In the guide that I have done, and also with a lot of discussions with Carolina, I told her that we have also a problem of implementing the nature-based solution and the way of thinking inside our city, because the information is not really reached to all kinds or all the categories of the society that are dealing with implementing these designs, either in the designing or implementing, or even in the nurseries. Even like the guidebooks that I also worked on with Carolina, the paper, it's actually done in English language because it's funded also with an international institution. And this is where we have tried to ask for changing the language to the local language so that it can reach all people that are involved in nature-based solution. So also from the lessons learned that I learned with dealing with the public sector is that us as consultants, we do need to raise issues beyond the TORs and the RFQs that actually reach us in order to design and implement as well. We, as consultants, we need to add more. And dealing with the public sector, they usually always focus with one thing, either, for example, the environment, or issues with the society, the social impact, or something with the economy, but they do not really gather all of these together in a holistic way of thinking. So this is where we come as consultants and where we try to fight for this. These are things that we are dealing with here. One funny thing is also the time frame. The time in dealing here with public sectors, because they are the ones dealing with spaces in the city mainly, they care about time frame. Time frame for them is deleting anything called strategy or building or planning. They always care about the opening or the launching of the space, and this is where they go wrong with choosing the right plant in the right place, with environmental benefits, with the society, with the even like going into detail in the size of the plant the growth rate of it, the benefits or not, depending on the typology of the urban space. So yeah, this is where I would like to have this input, but at the same time, I am really grateful for this this guide that we will surely use here, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Zina. Washington.
Yeah, thank you, Carolina, colleagues, for this opportunity. Yeah, lessons. So I will give a reflection on weak governance and enforcement. Number two, I'll give a focus on importance of amplifying the local communities' voices. And lastly, I will focus on the need for progressive land tenure systems. So onto my first point is that there is a significant disconnect, between policy and practice. So that was an aspect that really, was really glaring during our study. So this is as a result of building codes, critical physical planning clauses and climate resilience infrastructure measures that are outlined in policies and laws are not effectively enforced or implemented by the relevant institutional authorities. Therefore, efforts to plan, climate resilient cities are not really grounded in tailored and robust nature-based, tailored and grounded on principles of nature-based solutions, which are really critical for mitigating climate risks. And so where does this leave the urban poor, especially in informal settlements, are more exposed, to climate risks as disaster risk reduction responses are not well thought through, they are chaotic and uncoordinated. So these underscores my first point. And secondly, we recognized that amplifying, profiling, and prioritizing the voices and aspirations of vulnerable communities is essential for shaping future climate cities. So by ensuring these efforts are locally led, which is very important, we can achieve more sustainable and effective nature-based solution outcomes. This points to the importance of inclusivity during conceptualization processes of NBS in global South cities. So when I speak of profiling voices, in this context, I mean documenting the unique challenges faced by different demographics and co-designing tailored nature-based solutions to correspond, to these unique challenges. So through our Tomorrow Cities project, my colleagues and I, we had a privilege of witnessing firsthand how local communities in Nairobi's Kibera informal settlement are reimagining, their current low resilience land use. So they envisioned a future Kibera that is not only climate resilient, but also offers inclusive livelihoods and climate resilient infrastructures, So the key takeaway is that we must harness indigenous knowledge to build resilient cities in the global South. And lastly, it is obvious that successful nature-based solutions initiatives in cities, rely heavily on progressive land tenure systems. Such systems are essential for fostering confidence among local communities, investors, the local communities have to be ensured that they will not face displacement or they are being disenfranchised from their land, Then land security also, yeah. It encourages long-term investments in nature-based strategies, including urban greening, climate resilience, housing, road infrastructures. So ultimately, effective land tenure frameworks, enable successful implementation of special planning area processes, which it plays a critical role, or rather a central role in paving the way for resilient and sustainable urban development. Thank you.
Thank you, Washington. So I'm going to open the floor, and thank you, all of you. I'm going to open the floor to questions, and there's very interesting questions that I will start just picking now from the chat. So, I think, Natalia Burgos, hi, Natalia, was asking, what are, from our perspective, what have we learned from the experiences? Sorry, from your perspective, what can cities in the global north learn from experiences in cities in the global south? Who wants to answer this question? Or maybe Nadia can. I see you just you're there. Maybe you can just jump in. Go ahead.
Sure. Maybe I can just offer a quick answer. I guess it's because, we can leapfrog. So cities in the global south are still doing their planning. There's a lot of implementation, and there's a lot of building of cities that happens now. And I think there's a lot to be learned of how to do things differently. A lot of the stuff is happening very rapidly, and we can, through networks like this, we can convene conversations of these experimentations, and that can be used for future planning in the global north. I think there's also, there's so much mobility of resources, mobility of people, and our worlds are becoming smaller and smaller. And I guess learning from how cities develop in other places can help you understand, what the different needs of some of those citizens might be that live in other cities, and how you can learn from experiences that have worked in different places. So maybe I'll just leave it there as one intervention, but I think there's lots to be learned from the experimentation in the global south.
You're muted, Caro.
Gracias. So I'll go with another question. Thanks, Nadia. Juliana, Uribe Aguado, she asks, did you identify strategies to integrate the local and native knowledge on NBS designing and implementation? Maybe Washington, you can jump into the response of this question?
Yeah, of course, yes. So harnessing indigenous knowledge for nature-based solution, it's all about actively engaging the local communities from conceptualization of the nature-based solution actions, implementation of the nature-based solution actions, and co-achieving the outcomes. So during this process of engagement, here is where the local communities, they will tell you that, hey, it will not be advisable, maybe to do a high-rise building on this land because when it rains, it floods, and maybe occasionally we do have landslides, so maybe they'll tell you 10, 15 years back, there was a landslide on this particular land. And that is a privileged information that us as experts, researchers, local government, that we can leverage on so as to come up with climate resilience infrastructure in that particular context. So the key point here is that engaging the local communities in each and every step of the implementation of nature-based solution action. Then just to throw this in there, when you want to effectively amplify the voices of women and girls in nature-based solution actions, we found that having an all-women focus group discussion, was more effective. We could mine information. They were free to articulate their unique challenges, and that is how we could incorporate their needs into various nature-based solution actions that we were looking at, be it physical planning, be it trying to manage waste in their area, So the key word here is engaging them all through implementation, conceptualization, outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Washington. I will take just one more question and then we come back to the second panel discussion because time is going very fast. And Joan Andrea Lajon, she asked, does the book contain any advice about how we can communicate better those nature-based solutions? And the answer is yes. We have a chapter specifically that explains how to ground the concept of nature-based solutions. And you will see that in the design and implementation phases, we are very explicit in terms of what means to implement and design an NBS in terms of climate, in terms of people, in terms of nature, because that's the triology we always work with. And we have a very, very clear explanation for that. And Washington, thank you. I back up your message. We also experienced the same in Colombia. The best way to engage is to engage from the beginning and to be transparent and to build together, but also have clarity on the scope. I think it's important because there's always some limitations in terms of budget or time, and time was mentioned many times by Zina as well. Time is a limitation. There's no strategies. So that's what we have to deal with, but because we have those limitations, we need to be clear on the scope, this is what we can do. This is as much as we can go for, and maybe magic happens and you can even go beyond your expectations, which was also our case. But yeah, the grounding and scoping at the beginning is super important. So thank you. Thanks for your questions. We'll continue with the conversation. And I'm going to share again my screen. Where is my, okay, wait a minute. Sorry about this. Getting there. Okay, now. So the second panel and the conversation is very interesting, continues to be very interesting. So in the second panel discussion, the question is, what are the most common challenges you found when prioritizing areas to work on NBS in your city? For this conversation, I will introduce Chris, Juan, and Andreas Benson. Prof. Chris Gordon, who is also the editor of this book, is an environmental scientist with special interest in the biodiversity and functioning of coastal wetlands and freshwater systems, and many years of experience as a limnologist and aquatic resources management advisor. As an academician and as a consultant, he has in-depth and extensive knowledge of ecosystem functioning and conservation in various ecosystems he has worked on, such as the Volta River Basin, aquaculture coastal wetlands, and large rivers and estuary systems. Juan Carlos, he is the ecologist and scientific coordinator. He's from Colombia. Sorry, Chris is from Ghana. Juan Carlos, he is a scientific coordinator at Grupo Comunitario in Bogotá, which is an organization that is very, very active in a specific area of the city. He has studied water resources management, natural history, and ecology. He has 20 years of experience, over 20 years of experience of professional working in conservation of flora and fauna. And he has worked with different organizations such as the Nature Conservancy, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Pro Natura Mexico, Pro Aves Colombia, and across different countries such as United States, Mexico, and Costa Rica. And finally, my dear friend and colleague Andrea, she is a biologist from Javeriana University. She has a master's degree in environmental management and territorial planning from Stockholm University. She has worked with the Colombian public sector, where we met some years ago and we worked together. She has been working on both at the national and local levels in prioritization, design, and management of protected areas, ecological connectivity, and the formulation of conservation strategies, producing technical documents. And she's a leader also in private conservation, helping people that have their own lands to transform these lands into protected areas. So I'll give the floor to Chris Gordon, please. So let's back to the question. And let's start with you. What are the most common challenges you found when prioritizing areas to work on NPS in your city?
Well, it's actually interesting. There is a question in the chat on this. What are the challenges? So I can answer the two together. But I think we have to look at the fundamental issues. The fundamental issue is there's a current multi-crisis or poly-crisis in the world. We also have to appreciate that issues of equity and justice need to be considered in any of the activities that we are doing. And many of the solutions that come up from city managers do not consider equity and justice. So I'll talk about three challenges which I feel are common in southern cities. The first is the issue of congestion. There isn't space because of the value of the land. And the areas that are not built up are usually areas where you have informal settlements. So if you try to employ traditional nature-based solutions, the tendency is that these inhabitants of informal settlements are marginalized even further. The second is something that we don't like to talk about, but it's the issue of poor governance or corruption. We have green areas which are designated as green areas, then they're redesignated for residential or industry, and the income from this goes to certain individuals within a governance. And the last is what I call political interference. You find that, again, many of the nature-based solutions are fundamentally not expensive. They are really having a change in mindset. The love of nature that, Carolina, you have made very abundantly clear in your presentation. And because that is an intangible, it is not something that local leaders are interested in. So you may find that somebody wants to create a vertical garden between a busy road and a residential area, which will help improve air quality. But it's not in the interest of a particular political group to have such an intervention there. So that interference in the rollout, the implementation, what we're talking about, is something that is a real challenge. There are solutions to that, but I was to speak on challenges, so I'll end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Very clear, very sharp, and very true what you just mentioned for your context and for all of our context. I'll give the floor now to Juan and Maria Estela. I didn't introduce you, Maria Estela, but Maria Estela is the lawyer. I showed your picture before, and they're passionate environmentalists, and they have been working for a long time in protecting urban public spaces in Bogota. So please, Juan.
Thank you, Carolina. Hello, everybody, and everybody who's watching. It's a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to be part of this book. Our article, and one of the things that we've been exploring in the last couple of years, has been realizing and starting to articulate the inefficiency that we find in the green space management in Bogota. How much it costs, and all of these secondary effects of transportation, of congestion, of greenhouse gas emissions, loss of biodiversity, and several other aspects. And so what we've been looking at is how can we not necessarily start a big, specific project and with nature-based solutions, but really bring nature-based solutions attributes to the day-to-day management of green space maintenance here in Bogota. So we see there's a lot of opportunity to use the existing funding that is going on in Bogota, and probably future funding when we have cities that are really having very high tree planting targets, maybe even growing more green space, and looking at those associated costs of maintenance. So within that idea, within those concepts, what we find is a lot what Chris was just mentioning. This very resistance, a kind of a bureaucratic resistance, as we like to call it, to innovation. Things have been managed in Bogota. The parks, the rivers, the creeks in Bogota have been managed essentially the same way for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Very little has changed. There's been some discussion around, or some recognition of Bogota as the capital of this biodiverse country of Colombia. But the actions that really are implemented, there's small and sporadic advancements when different political stars align. Specific mayors, some city council members, maybe some different city contractors, but they're very short-lived. And so one of the things that we try to put a lot of emphasis on is be ready to identify and act when those stars align. So a lot of bureaucratic resistance to change. A lot of very short periods, as somebody mentioned before, I think from Lebanon or from Jordan. Most of the city contractors have 1-year contracts, really 8 months, maybe 6-month contracts. And so a lot of them don't have the luxury to really do long-term planning. They have to do very short projects, very limited projects, and hope that they get rehired. Every 4 years, we have a new mayor, and the pendulum swings very widely here in Bogota, from an interest in biodiversity to biodiversity really takes a very big, very far back seat to the different political platforms or agendas. So one of the things that we've been trying, and I think having some advancement, is really focusing on the economics of it, the reduction of costs associated with green space management. And I think that can have a lot of contributions to many cities in the Global South. So there's a lot of challenges, but looking for ways, and I think the economic argument is always going to be an important one wherever you are in the world. So thanks, and we're very happy to be part of this. Back to you.
Thank you, Juan. Very important topics that you brought in. The inefficiencies and the resistance to change is absolutely something that unites us as well in our complexities. Andrea, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Carolina. And as Carlos said, it is a pleasure to be part of this book. Thank you. One of the key aspects when prioritizing areas in Soacha and La Ceja was the accuracy and the scale of the information collected through GIS, which we needed to validate in field. There were also discrepancies between the actual conditions of the land or the areas and the data provided by the municipal administration, which created some gaps in the final map that needed adjusting. So how we did it? We solved by comparing in field. I mean, the most phase, we was faced with what was technically correct with what was practically feasible. It was the main challenge, I guess. But another major challenge was the budget, as Carolina just said, prioritizing a site for designing an NBS that could be implemented on a low budget. It is very, very hard. We had limited funds for both designings, La Ceja and Soacha, and implementation as well. But some interested areas present significant needs for transformation and restoration, some even requiring community relocation, which was beyond our scope. So it was another big challenge. So field visits are the key to know the reality of the territory and to find the opportunities to select which one is the best choice. Additionally, in most of the locations, we assessed the neighborhoods had high levels of violence, which we had to take into account to avoid putting the technical team at risk. I guess those were the main challenges we get in La Ceja and Soacha. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I can't agree more with you, and I want just to emphasize the fact that it's very, very important to go to the field, to understand what's happening, to talk to people, because the maps tell one part of the story, but the other part of the story deserves to be seen in the ground during these field visits. So now, sorry, we're almost running out of time, but if you bear with us, we still have one question to answer. And as I try to bring back my presentation, which I don't find, I'm gonna just read the question and give, I know why it wasn't happening. Okay, it's here. Let's just bring it back. So fourth question and final question before we gave the closing remarks. How have you integrated people's value regarding nature into your city, into your work in cities? This is a very, very important question. And I think we have already given some elements to this question, but I'm gonna introduce two of our guest speakers here. So we have Isabel Melo. She is a researcher from the urban team of the Nature-Based Solutions Center at Humboldt Institute in Colombia. She is a biologist and she has a PhD in ecology and conservation from Mato Grosso do Sul University. And Lea, she is a policy researcher at ARIN with a background in law and policy development. Her work focuses on the intersection of science and policy to support resilience and adaptation efforts for vulnerable communities. So I'll give the floor to Lea. Please, the floor is yours.
All right, just confirm that you can hear me. I'll just take a minute or two to ventilate on the importance of putting the people's voice at the center and how we've done that. So my name is Lea from the Africa Research and Impact Network, and what we did as part of our work that we shared in the guide is to ensure that the people who we engaged, the social groups, the women, the youth, the elderly persons, the men, the small business people, we ensured that their voices were properly represented, and we had co-dialogues with the local authorities involving the community group so that we were not just speaking on their behalf, but they were able to speak and voice out their notions on nature-based solutions, what they thought would work, what they thought would not work, what was working presently, and what would work in future. I'd like to say at this point that we used a very interesting methodology that perhaps would pick your interest or pick your minds, and it is elaborately discussed in the guidebook. I think that would be a very very nice reference, because this methodology that incorporated and put to the forefront the voices of the persons we were working with was co-developed, co-created by them. So it's very exciting to see what they were able to come up with and how we were able to deploy that specific participatory methodology. Putting the people's voices at the fore and center also ensured that the solutions were upscaled, because we realized that for many policymakers, they wanted to see, is this evidence that you're presenting to us, has it been informed by the urban poor who are working within that context? So you're able to demonstrate, and they're through their representatives, that indeed these are co-created solutions that are coming from the community groups. It also enhanced sustainability, because then there's that ownership that they had. They felt that we're not talking at them, and we're not just there to fulfill some project objectives and some project interest of the funders, that is, but they felt that we were really wanting to incorporate solutions that would benefit them from day to day, that would benefit not only their children but also the future generation. And this really created that aspect of sustainability when you're talking about incorporating their voices. And then just finally, that self-initiative and self-agency was very important to us. And how we did this, of course, is through engaging them at every step of the way, as my panelists, my fellow colleagues and panelists have alluded to, from conceptualization, and then feeling that they are part of this process, so that when you're talking about a future, in this context, it was Kibera, an informal settlement called Kibera. So we are talking about a future Kibera. What do we mean? How does this relate to the people who are living there presently, the people who are going to be living there in future? What does a better Kibera look like? And all this is, again, elaborated very well in the guide. So really interesting to have seen that come to fruition, and the lessons that we have shared are hopefully going to be extremely useful for other users of the guidebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks. Isabel.
Thank you, Carolina, and hello to everyone. I pretty much agree with what Leah said. I'm just going to complement, and I will say that it's essential to include different values from various actors in the co-creation process, because this ensures that the nature-based solutions are more equitable, are better adapted to local needs, and accepted by the broader range of stakeholders. By integrating diverse values and perspectives, the interventions account for the specific challenges and opportunities of each group, improving their sustainability and long-term success while shaping a more inclusive final product. The case study Diana Ruiz and myself presented in the book illustrates a co-creation process from a monitoring strategy following the methods proposed in the Urban Transformation Guidelines created in the Interlace project by the Autonomous University of Barcelona in Spain, Humboldt Institute in Colombia, and YES Innovation in Ecuador. This guide uses an agile methodology, which includes an initial phase of identifying stakeholders to ensure plurality of voices. Additionally, it incorporates continuous cycles of reflecting that encourages dialogues and participation through the process. Also, we use the Pebble distribution method, where actors or stakeholders discuss and weigh the evaluation criteria, which serves as the basis for determining what aspects will be monitored. For example, in this case, the monitoring guide questions were selected based on the participant experiences related to the program. it was decided to monitor the diversity of insects and birds and how the planted gardens influence, their presence. The social component was also included, studying how the program's implementation strengthens neighborhood ties, increase trust and change perception of nature, and sense of belonging in the intervention areas. These guidelines were also applied in other cities, such as Granollers in Spain, where a city greening project was developed. In that case, a new citizen participation body was established, including different groups of actors who met regularly to discuss the aspects of the project design, incorporating their values. In Puerto Viejo, Ecuador, a riverside park was also co-designed with various actors, including local government, academia, and community, incorporating values such as the intrinsic value to promote biodiversity and also cultural and recreational values and aesthetic values. These were reflected in the final design that was sensible to people and nature. To finish, in general, at the urban team of nature-based solution centers in the Humboldt Institute, we work with participatory approaches using methodological tools such as living labs and participatory mapping that allows us for the involvement of various groups of actors, including decision makers, grassroots communities, organization, academia, NGOs, and private sectors to integrate their visions and give them voice, to include the values and perceptions in different processes. Thank you very much, Carolina.
Thank you, Isabel, Lea, and everyone. I think I'm going to pick very quickly two questions and then give the floor to Chris so that he can give the closing remarks. First, thank you everyone on YouTube that has been very active with the questions. So just very quickly, Luz Adriana Carrillo, she asks, how do you think this guide differs from other guides on NBS? So we actually have an introduction where we do a study we provide the results of a study we did for this guide, and we studied 64 guides and manuals that exist across the Global South. And what I can say that this guide stands up for is that it's a guide from the South to the South. So all the efforts have been financed by us and supported by us. It doesn't belong to any project financed by the North. We share these commonalities and these challenges, and we are very open in terms of the challenges and the opportunities of working on NBS. I think that's another thing that stands up. We also provide a clear approach that is driven to action. I don't know what else, Nadia, maybe you can add something else. But yeah, I think we have a very, very practical approach with a diversity and inclusive approach as well. What all the speakers have mentioned, which is the participation and the different values of nature, it's embedded in the book. Yeah, so I think, I don't know, Nadia, if you want to add anything else. No? Okay, great. And Sandra Isola, hi Sandra from Peru, she asked she says one of the challenges is to involve the authorities in charge of the public budget. Does the book share some strategies about that? So short response, yes and no. Yes, because in the finance section, we explain the different instruments, and we also talked about the possibilities of engaging different types of budget for one NBS, because from a multifunctionality perspective, one NBS can be supporting different interests from different sectors. For example, infrastructure sector or environment sector or health sector, recreation sector. So one NBS can be supporting to all of them, but the challenge in practice, and this is not resolved by the book because it's even very still a challenge for municipalities, is how to mix funding. Because as it was said before, you know, I think it was Zina who was saying the environment is only working for environment and social only working for social and infrastructure for infrastructure. And when you have leadership that try to work together, then you have other authorities that say, no, but you shouldn't be using your funding, environmental funding, for social work. So there's still a limitation at the system level. So yeah, that's not something we couldn't solve with the book, but we acknowledge that's a challenge. So thank you. Chris, back to you for closing remarks.
Yeah, I'm very aware of the challenge of time because the discussion has been very, very rich. So I just want to speak on one aspect which most of the people have spoken about, and that is the issue of agency and that of voice. The book presents the voice coming from the South to the North, but it also presents very strongly the voice of the unheard, people who are living at the, in quotes, the marginalized edges of society, and how we can involve them. It speaks to the voice of indigenous and local communities who have vast amounts of knowledge that can be brought into the discourse and the narrative. So for me, the question of what makes it different and what we add value to the global discourse on nature-based solution is that we are giving a truly Southern perspective of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was very sharp, on time, and yeah, very to the point. Thank you for those closing remarks. So just to say something in addition before closing, go please and buy the book. If you haven't been yet to our website, please go. Just bear with us if you don't receive the book immediately, because we're still sorting the technical installation of the website and everything. So it will arrive to your emails. But yeah, please support us. Please contact us. Please get in touch with any of us if you want to go, if you have ideas, if you want to work in projects, if you want to work in other knowledge tools, please be in contact. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a pleasure. Thanks to all the guest authors. And we hope that this community keeps growing and that this work continues. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the people on YouTube that were from the beginning till the end. And yeah, thank you very much. And if there's still questions, I will respond them on the YouTube link. So I will stop the.
Thank you, Caro.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Don't leave yet. I just
Bye.
need to finish the session in YouTube, but I don't know how. Hold on. YouTube. Okay, here.